in high definition from KGMB. This is your source for breaking news in the morning. Hawaii News Now Sunrise, early edition.
Just ahead, it is Veterans Day, and we want to pay tribute, of course, to the men and women who serve our great nation. Sunrise going on the road this morning. We're down at the Pacific Aviation Museum in Pearl Harbor. We're going to check in with the gang in just a few minutes. Well, today, Sunrise is headed on the road. The gang is over at the Pacific Aviation Museum in Pearl Harbor on this Veterans Day. Good morning.
Good morning,
Nancy.
Small change of venue this morning,
Yeah,
right?
we had originally planned to go to Kaneohe.
Right.
But the weather didn't look like it was going to cooperate,
Right.
and so we've, well, Grace was driving. She took a left instead of a right.
I like how he blames me.
No. Either way, this is still fascinating stuff.
It is.
This
And we'll have
amazing.
reports from K-Bay as well.
That's right, and we're here, of course, saluting our veterans on Veterans Day here in 2015.
That's right. So, yeah, if you're enjoying your day off, please just take some time to remember the people that have sacrificed so much for us. We'll be right back. Good morning and welcome to Pacific Aviation Museum, Pearl Harbor. Happy Veterans Day, everyone.
And we are here today in order to honor the veterans in our lives and in your lives, and to thank them for their sacrifice that they have made for our country. And we're in this beautiful venue, and this is amazing to be here and see all these planes.
Dwarfed by these vintage
Yeah.
aircraft that are in this huge hangar that survived the December 7, 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor. There's lots of history in this building.
This morning's show is also going to feature some reports that Billy and I did earlier in the week from the Kaneohe Bay Marine Corps base, which has a great deal of history itself, and the person who knows the most about it was kind enough to tell us a lot.
And she's a walking encyclopedia. We'll also tell you what was there before Marine Corps Base Hawaii Kaneohe was there, and we'll get kind of some historical shots as well.
Very timely, not just because it's Veterans Day, but because the Marines celebrated their 240th birthday yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And we had hoped this morning to be there on Marine Corps Base Hawaii, but the location was outside and exposed, and we're a little worried about the weather because the forecast called for some pretty significant shower activity, and that is going on in spots across our state right now.
So we're learning some new things about our branches of military today.
Yeah, and you're probably looking behind us right here. This is a B-25 bomber. This is part of the Doolittle raid. This was back in April 18th, 1942. We'll have a little bit more on that history. But we just thought it's so prominent behind us that you might want to know what it is.
And it's good to be around this history, and it's good that it's shared in a place where you can bring families and kids and teach the little ones who don't know about these parts of history.
All right. We're going to have much more from the Pacific Aviation Museum throughout the morning here on Sunrise. We hope you join us on this Veterans Day. We'll be right back.
Hey, Lacey, thanks very much. You can see the Japanese Zero behind me, one of 50 aircraft on display here at the Pacific Aviation Museum, Pearl Harbor. This room, this hangar deals primarily with World War II aircraft. Now, when we get over to Hangar 79 a little later this morning, you'll see everything from the Cold War to Vietnam and beyond. It's an amazing, amazing place to visit with your family, to remember. This December 7 will be 74 years since the attack on Pearl Harbor, and the Aviation Museum really considers its mission, its responsibility to pass on this legacy from the greatest generation of their commitment to peace, to freedom. Take some time here in the near future, get your family out here and enjoy the Pacific Aviation Museum and this wonderful history. Wonderful weather, yeah, maybe. It's a little wet, a little breezy, but we've got a pretty nice day ahead of us for your Veterans Day.
Happy Veterans Day. We are coming to you live from the Pacific Aviation Museum, Pearl Harbor, surrounded by all these vintage planes, which we have been checking out during the breaks, which have been really cool to see, and learn so much of the history of our military on this day.
This particular hangar is filled with aircraft from World War II, but I'm going to go over to Hangar 79 later this morning. It's got helicopters and jets and aircraft from everything from the Cold War through Vietnam. It's a fascinating place, and we'll visit that a little later this morning.
This museum is on Ford Island. It's open to the public. If you've never been, it's really a fascinating place with a lot of American history in it.
So I thought we talked about
Welcome back to our Veterans Day broadcast live from the Pacific Aviation Museum. I don't know if you can see, that's Marine Captain Joe Foss there behind me. And this setting, you can see mechanics who are working on a Wildcat fighter. This is at Guadalcanal. And Captain Foss was famous, is famous because of his fighting there. Even though he had malaria, he was personally responsible for downing 26 enemy aircraft. This diorama, just one of the many, all the history here at the Pacific Aviation Museum that we encourage you to come out and see on this Veterans Day. Any day is a great day to be out here at the Pacific Aviation Museum. Let's take a look at the weather. It is a bit breezy outside. We do expect to see some mix of sunshine and showers. Hey, Lacey, thanks very much. Over my shoulder, you can see a P-40E aircraft that's very similar to the P-40B that was flown by Army Lieutenants George Welch and Ken Taylor on December 7, 1941. They were watching the bombs fall from the Officers Club, raced in Ken's Buick to Haleiwa to jump in these planes, got in the air, and each shot down, I think, 2 enemy aircraft during that aerial battle that followed. But just one of the 50 aircraft that are on display here at the Pacific Aviation Museum. On this Veterans Day, we're very proud to be here, and thank you, veterans, for your service, for all that you've done for our country. Let me get into the weather very quickly here. We've got a pretty nice day ahead of us, breezy, some showers, some sunshine.
Time to get you back to the Pacific Aviation Museum.
Hey, Ramsey, thanks very much. This is Clint Churchill, a recognizable face, I'm sure. 30 years flying for the Hawaii Air National Guard, retired as commander 19 years ago. You were one of 4 people, 4 men who had the original idea for the Pacific Aviation Museum. Who were the other 3?
Well, Admiral Ron Hayes,
right.
John Sterling, and Don Parent. We had lunch one day. In fact, it was out at Ko'olina. And at the end of that lunch, we said, you know how much work this is going to be? Are you in? And we all said, we're all in.
Did you have any idea how much work it was going to be?
No, but it's been a labor of love, and pretty pleased with the progress we've made.
Now, you've been open for 9 years.
It'll be 9 years this December 7th that we've been open. And within the next 2 weeks, we will welcome our visitor number 1.5 million.
Oh, really? Wow. Is it bigger? I mean, it's got to be amazing to see this take place after it was just an idea not too many years ago.
Well, we're pretty pleased with the progress and also what we do for the community. Our outreach program, we have about 11,000 students each year, either through field trips coming to the museum or our outreach program where we go out to the classrooms.
Why is this important?
Well, it's about education. And to me, it's about honoring aviators and their support personnel who defended our freedom. And what more appropriate day than on Veterans Day to talk and think about the role that aviation played in securing the freedom that we enjoy.
This is an expensive endeavor. You have, to acquire the planes, to get them in shape, to display. It's a lot of money that's been donated, given to continue this mission.
That's correct. The community has been so supportive. We had 233 founding donors for our first phase at $5,000 or more. Our good congressional delegation, and I have to mention the late Senator Inouye and his support in the early days, or we simply wouldn't be here.
To support this mission of carrying on the legacy of that commitment to freedom and to peace here at the Pacific Aviation Museum. There's an event coming up on December 5th, a couple days before the anniversary of the attack, and you have a big event planned over at Hangar 79.
We do. We have an annual event to raise funds. The museum itself is self-sustaining with ticket sales and so forth. So our fundraising and the fundraising dinner we have mainly supports our education program and our restoration of aircraft. So we expect to have some 700 folks over in Hangar 79. That hangar is twice the size of this hangar, a great spot. You can find out on our website, pacificaviationmuseum.org, all the details about the dinner. Individual ticket prices, $275. It is a fundraiser, so we hope the community comes out again and gives it great support.
I'm sure they will. This is a great way to support this very important mission of the Pacific Aviation Museum. We'll have a link to your website on ours as well at hawaiinewsnow.com. Clint Churchill, one of the founding fathers of the Pacific Aviation Museum. Thanks for getting up so early this morning and coming and seeing us.
Thank you for coming out, Dan.
Veterans Day, we continue to say thank you to those who have served, who are serving now here and around the world. We'll be back. Welcome back to our Sunrise on the Road broadcast. We're here at the Pacific Aviation Museum, Pearl Harbor. And let me step aside and you can see behind me one of the displays. This is actually wreckage of a Japanese Zero that crashed on Niihau on December 7, 1941. Japanese Naval Airman First Class Shigenori Nishikaichi crash landed on Niihau after ground fire from Oahu. One of the many incredibly wonderful displays of World War II action, particularly December 7, 1941, here at the Pacific Aviation Museum. On this Veterans Day, if you are headed out, you got the day off from work, you're wondering how the weather's going to be, maybe you're going to the beach with family and friends, pretty good day. It's kind of breezy. Good morning, and this bright yellow plane behind me, a biplane, is called, well, it's a Boeing Stearman. This was the primary training plane for pilots in World War II era. And in fact, this very plane was the training plane for George H.W. Bush, Bush 1, when he was training to be a Navy pilot in December of 1942. Very antiquated, even at that point in time. Very, electrical. I mean, they communicated just by almost yelling at each other, but it certainly did its job and trained so many pilots for World War II, including Bush 1. Let's check the weather for this Veterans Day 2015. 82 to 88. Welcome back to our Veterans Day on the Road broadcast here at the Pacific Aviation Museum, Pearl Harbor. Behind me is the hangar that we were just in, and behind Ben, our photographer, is a hangar we'll be visiting in a few minutes. This is Clint Churchill, who's one of the founding fathers of this museum. Talk about these planes that are here in between.
Well, the behind us is the F-5 Freedom Fighter, painted in the colors of the Republic of Korea. Next is the A-3, the largest aircraft to fly off naval aircraft carrier. Then the F-14 Tomcat, of course, made famous in the movie Top Gun. Next, the F-86E, which flew in the Hawaii Air National Guard here from about 1956 to 61. And the last plane is near and dear to my heart. The first plane I flew when we moved here to Hawaii 46 years ago, the F-102. The Deuce flew from 1961 to 1977 in the Hawaii Air National Guard. Clint
Churchill was 30 years with the Air National Guard. You ended your career as commander, right?
I sure did, yes.
Yeah. Thanks for being with us this morning. Let's talk quickly about the weather. We've got more, of course, coming from our Veterans Day broadcast here at the Pacific Aviation Museum. The day today, this holiday, should be pretty nice, breezy. Well, you can see the weather right behind that orange and white control tower, which actually, Clint Churchill, wasn't operational during the attack in December 7, 1941.
The tower itself was actually under construction. The lower tower was working. It's actually a water tower for additional water pressure for the island, but the cab on top was not completed until April of 1942.
All right, quickly, that's going to be a part of the museum and accessible by visitors when?
Well, hopefully in the next year and a half, we'll complete the restoration of the operations building and the elevator to be able to get to the top of the tower.
Pacific Aviation Museum of Pearl Harbor just growing and growing. Let's take a look at the weather on this Veterans Day 2015. Breezy, some sunshine. Welcome back to the Pacific Aviation Museum here at Pearl Harbor. Do you see those bullet holes? That's actually bullet holes from the attack that occurred on December 7, 1941. Coming up this year, 74. Next year will be the 75th commemoration of that attack.
That's correct. It'll be a major event for our community for the 75th.
And there's a big event coming this year as well, right in this hangar 79. It's coming up on December 5th, a gala that will raise funds to keep this wonderful museum going and provide support for all the education programs. Clint and I are going to step aside. Clint Churchill, one of the founding fathers of this museum, and take a look at this plane, which came from the bottom of Lake Michigan, you're telling me.
That's correct. It's an SBD Dauntless of the type that turned the tide in the Battle of Midway, where our naval aviation forces sank 4 Japanese aircraft carriers.
Now, it was at the bottom of Lake Michigan because that's where the training for these planes took place, right?
That's correct. We had two ships, the Sable and the Wolverine, where the naval aviators were trained for takeoff and landing on a flat top, and more than a couple hundred of them went into the drink. And several, or probably more than 100, still on the bottom of Lake Michigan.
Well, there's one here at the Pacific Aviation Museum. Let's check the weather quickly for this holiday Veterans Day. It's going to be a pretty nice one out there.
Back out to Pearl Harbor with Dan Cook, live on this Veterans Day from the Pacific Aviation Museum. Good morning.
Good morning, Ramsey, and thank you. We're looking at the Swamp Ghost, one of the iconic artifacts here, which is a World War II era plane shot down, Clint, in New Guinea.
Yeah, shot down in New Guinea in February of 1942. It's a B-17. It actually flew in Hawaii for about 6 weeks, starting about December 17th of 41. And it was shot down and crash landed in a swamp in the northeastern part of New Guinea. The crew of 9 took them 45 days to make it back to civilization. They all survived. The plane was in the swamp for about 30 years, discovered, and has been since brought initially to California and now to our museum here in Hawaii.
It's just one of the many artifacts here that help talk not only about the Vietnam era and World War II era, but the Korean conflict, the Cold War. It's all here at the Pacific Aviation Museum in Pearl Harbor. 2 hangars now, a third to be added. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Let's chat about the weather. It's going to be a pretty nice holiday, Veterans Day. We'll see showers. What a fun day. The simulators look like fun, didn't they? Yeah. We barely got Billy back. He was in one of those and he didn't want to let it go.
That was fun.
Yeah. We, on this Veterans Day, want to say thank you to all service members, past and present. And in our own families, there have been many. My father served in World War II near the end as a clerk typist over in Germany. My nephew is a pilot of helicopters. He flew Apaches, 2 tours of Afghanistan, now flying a Black Hawk medevac in the U.S. mainland. There he is. That's Grant Hutchison, my nephew. And my wife, Kay Howe's brother, gave the ultimate sacrifice in Afghanistan in 2004, losing his life when the Humvee that he was driving was bombed.
Yeah, my dad was an aerial photographer in the Army Air Force, and to this day is really fond of photography. And Bernadette's father was a guerrilla in the Philippines, then joined U.S. Armed Services in Korea, and also served in Vietnam and had a Purple Heart.
My uncle served in the United States Marine Corps for over 20 years, and he's retired, but his kids all went on to serve in the United States Air Force, in the Army, and in the Marine Corps, all serving in the Middle East.
That's the uncle that you're named after.
Yes.
And my great uncle, Seisen Uehara, served with the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. But you know what? Thanks to all of our veterans and everybody that has sacrificed so much to make this country so great.
Kind of hard to get information out of your uncle.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
They didn't
In fact,
talk
it had
much
to come
about
from my
that.
grandma.
Yeah.
And even then, she didn't have much information.
Right,
But, you know,
right.
that's very Japanese. It's
Well,
very Nisei.
at that time, it was like you just don't talk about it, you move forward,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And,
But-
you know, carrying those stories forward is a big part of the mission here at Pacific Aviation Museum, carrying on the legacy, the commitment of what they call the greatest generation here. It's a great spot to bring the family to learn more about what happened in the past, specifically December 7, 1941, almost 74 years ago.
You know, my dad was in his 90s before he told me some stories. I think he didn't think I was old enough to hear them.
Amazing.
You just made it.
Well, we've had an amazing experience here at the Pacific Aviation Museum. We've learned so much about history. They've been so nice to us here. And we just wanted to make this a tradition for our Sunrise crew, who are so hardworking, to say thank you to all of our veterans on this Veterans Day.
That's right. Thank you.